What I want to talk about today is 10 records that are at or around the $10 price point. And we're not just talking about any 10 records, we're talking about great records that are at that $10 price point. This is stuff that's like in that post-bop modal kind of thing that everybody's really digging these days. And I think these records should be more appreciated, but guess what? There's not a single one on this list that's had a US vinyl reissue since it was originally put out. And so these are records that, as far as I can tell, aren't getting the attention that they deserve, and they're still cheap. And so this is just a fantastic opportunity, not for people to just buy them to buy, again, anything, but like buy them because it's great music and because you'll actually enjoy it. You'll get repeat listens out of it. I know I do. And so, yeah, that's what I want to cover. Before we get into it, as always, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow me on Instagram at what_can_brown. All right, so let's get right into it. What I'm going to do for these 10 is I'm actually going to go in descending order in terms of the median Discogs value. But here's the thing. Again, they're all around the $10 price point, okay? It's all within like $1, like 50 or something like that. So all you have to think about is that they're all basically about 10 bucks. Anyway, all right. Number one is McCoy Tyner's Sama Layuca. I believe that's how that's pronounced. This is on the Milestone label. It was released in 1974, which I think is just a really exciting time for McCoy Tyner. He was putting out a lot of great work on this label, and specifically around this time period. So one of the most exciting things about this record is the lineup. I mean, obviously the music is the most exciting, but like the lineup basically dictates that there must be great music. And why I say that is because you've got Bobby Hutcherson, you have Gary Bartz, Azar Lawrence, John Stubblefield, Buster Williams, Billy Hart, Guillermo Franco, and M. Tume. So there is a little bit of a big lineup, but it's really leaning into that post-bop modal kind of thing. McCoy Tyner was even like innovating in that space in the early to mid 70s. And yeah, so I guess if I'm going to say anything in terms of like highlights, the title track is fantastic. Certainly start with Sama Layuca and then consider whether you even want this album. McCoy Tyner solo on that piece is just amazing. It starts like 2 minutes in, followed by a Azar Lawrence solo, then Hutcherson, and all of this is sort of over this kind of like swirling percussion, a rhythmic kind of thing. It's just everything that you want, again, in that kind of post-bop space, I think is represented really, really well. Happens to be recorded really, really well. Tony May's the engineer on this thing. And you know, some of these guys I think were still on contract for Blue Note Records, but came over to record this with McCoy Tyner. So anyway, fantastic one. I think the median value on this is like $10.90. I've come across so many copies of this thing in my time collecting, buying records, and listening to music. And, at this point, it was very easy for me to find a $10 one that happens to be in great shape. And I think that others will be able to do the same. All right, the second one up is George Adams Quintet, and this is Paradise Space Shuttle. Funnily enough, this is not the first time I've showed this record in one of my videos, but the last time I did it was very different context. I was talking about, I think this is like January, I was talking about how I was shifting to different labels to discover music, and that's kind of how I came across this one. It is on the Timeless Muse label, was released in 1979. Pretty lean lineup on this record, and actually a lot of George Adams records. He does keep it pretty lean. So you've got George Adams, Ron Burton on piano, Don Pate on bass, Al Foster on drums, and then Azedin Weston, who is on sort of auxiliary percussion. So about this, let's see. I mean, if I'm going to highlight maybe a specific track to start with, City of Peace, Peace, has Adams playing with kind of a Pharoah Sanders inspired tone, and I just get a lot of energy from that one. But really across this album, I think it's not squarely sort of modal and post bop. There is some like heavy funk elements. There's some hard bop elements. So he doesn't just stick with say one vibe that you might expect, say from 1979. But the important thing to know is that the whole thing is great. Median value on this one is just $10.41. And again, like all of these, hasn't had a reissue in the US on vinyl. All right, a couple of these are $10 on the dot, and this one is fits that description. It's Pat LaBarbera's Pass It On. So this was originally released in 1976 on PM Records, which is a record label owned by Gene Perla. So the lineup on here, you've got Joe LaBarbera, presumably a relation of Pat. You've got Don Thompson, Richard Barak, I believe. So actually, Richard Barak and Don Thompson kind of trade off on piano. And then you have Gene Perla. So in terms of a highlight on this thing, I really like, where is it? Little Lady. So this is the first track on side 2. I think it's a highlight of the whole album. It's a modal piece. It's excellent. One thing that I want to reference about this, you might notice that this is still in shrink. So guess what? This is kind of exciting. You can go to pmrecords.com and you can order a brand new dead stock copy of this record. And when I say dead stock, I mean it's the original pressing. They just have a lot of them still from 1976. And now I will say, if you go to pmrecords.com and you order dead stock, it is $19.99. You can find this for $10 all day and all night in the sort of aftermarket, eBay and going to record stores and that kind of thing. You can find this for $10. But if you want one that is that's brand new, still in shrink, original dead stock copy, you can do it at pmrecords.com. And the best part of that is Gene Perla manages that website and will personally ship it to you. So when I got mine, I think he included a note or something. And so what's kind of cool is that Gene Perla, like I said, owns PM Records. He has a bunch of vinyl and CDs that are dead stock of the titles. Now there's not the Stone Alliance title that is probably the most sort of collectible record on PM Records. He doesn't have any dead stock of that, but there's a lot of dead stock on there. I've picked up some Elvin Jones stuff, this one, some other things. I'm trying to think, but there's so much great music on PM Records. And like I said, you can go over there and if you email them, because I think I had a problem with my shopping cart. I emailed them and Gene Perla was the one who responded. So anyway, go pick up this one and also go look and see what they have in stock and talk to Gene Perla. All right, the next one also comes in at $10, and that is Jay Hoggard's Riverside Dance. Perhaps I'm a little bit biased. When I went to college, Jay was my professor of both jazz performance as well as improvisation, and I'm a big fan of his work. But anyway, Riverside Dance is a fantastic album. This was originally released on India Navigation in 1985. Really great lineup on this one. So you've got Jerome Harris, Vernon Reid, Fionn Acklaf, and then you have Onaje Allen Gums, I believe is how you pronounce his name. So in terms of highlights on this thing, Mariposa is a huge highlight. Features Vernon Reid's kind of overdriven guitar as this kind of low guttural thing, and yet despite the fact that that's there, still very lyrical and very beautiful piece. Jay was incorporating a lot of kind of world music and even new age kind of themes in some of his albums, especially into the 80s, but which is when this was recorded. But I find that that this one doesn't lean into that as much. And so anyway, this is a highlight, but really anything that Jay did on India Navigation I think is worth having. But yeah, you can find this one for $10. All right, next up, and incidentally, by the way, I didn't mention this, there's no overlap of leaders here, and there's no overlap of labels either. That was actually a little bit of a intentional kind of thing because I thought that it'd be fun for folks to maybe hear some music from just a wide spectrum of albums that, again, are kind of at this $10 price point. So this next one, I'm sure you know the label on this one. This is ECM, but this is, I believe it's Miroslav Vitous, perhaps, and the title is I think it's self-titled, the Miroslav Vitous Group. So this was originally released in 1981, again on ECM. The lineup here includes John Christensen, Kenny Kirkland, and John Sermon. Love John Sermon. He plays a variety of styles, but he sounds fantastic here. So in terms of specific tracks, I think that the opener of the entire thing, which is called "When Face Gets Pale," it's just it's awesome. There's a great piano and bass kind of feature. It's super relaxing music, and actually, I think that particular piece doesn't have Sermon on it. But if you then go to the track Interplay, John Sermon plays on that one, and he's fantastic. I will say that that this album is more experimental. I feel like a lot of the albums that I'm covering here are kind of post-bop E, kind of modal E, and this one is a little bit more experimental, so you kind of have to know that going in. But another great one, and one that won't set you back again more than $10. All right, next one, and this is dipping just below the $10 price point at $9.99, and this is Billy Hart's Enchance. So this one was released in 1977 on the Horizon label. The lineup includes a number of folks, a number of really exciting folks actually. So you've got Oliver Lake, Buster Williams, or Dave Holland. They trade off. You've got Billy Hart again, and Eddie Henderson, Hannibal Marvin Pedersen, Thabo Michael Carvin, Don Pullen, and Dewey Redman. Incidentally, this one was also mastered by Bernie Grunman. So what I would say about this one, and maybe you can kind of get the sense just based on that lineup, right? Because a few of those folks that I mentioned, especially Oliver Lake, I think Hannibal Marvin Pedersen, certainly Don Pullen and Dewey Redman, some of these folks are known for playing a little bit more adventurous music. And I will say that the music here is somewhat challenging in places. It also, because of the nature of that larger lineup, does have a little bit of a larger orchestra feel, except you still have those kind of stark individual soloist kind of features, right? So I think the sax soloists, Dewey Redman and Oliver Lake, are certainly known again for their adventurous improvisation, and there is definitely some of that here. But I think what grounds this is really Billy Hart. So his kind of swirling cymbal work, he maintains a sense of time for the most part throughout, and so I just think it's a great feature. I think with some of the most innovative musicians of the time, being able to play with Billy Hart here and kind of show what they can do, I think is really exciting. And yeah, fantastic album, and like I said, $9.99. I mean, in that lineup, I mean, just go pick this up. It's just really great. All right, the seventh one on my list is Joe Farrell's Sonic Text, and this one comes in at the $9.99 price point. I was actually looking at some Chico Freeman stuff to pull in from Contemporary Records, but ended up going for Joe Farrell because I think it's a little bit less known. So this was released in 1981 on Contemporary Records. The lineup here includes Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, of course. You have Tony Dumas, Peter Erskine, and George Cables. This is another title that was mastered by Bernie Grunman, so you know it's going to sound great. I will say that this one, out of all the ones on this list, is a little bit more traditional in terms of it leaning more towards hard bop versus, say some of the other styles that were popular in the 70s and even into the 80s. And I think, probably the best example, though, of what this album sounds like is probably the title track, Sonic Text. But it's a great one. I think Freddie Hubbard is featured really well across this entire album. Obviously, because it's Hubbard, you are going to have his kind of like somewhat smooth tone. So if you're familiar with Hubbard's work on CTI, and certainly after that, you'll know that Freddie Hubbard just at some point in time always had this like very syrupy kind of tone. And he brings it here, but again, I think some of the other instruments are keep it feeling more hard bop, even if Hubbard was a little bit smooth with his tone. But again, this is another great one, and I think this is also one that you just look at the cover and you're like, this just feels so 80s, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons why people shy away from it. But there's great stuff here, and again, at the $10 price point. All right, you may not have thought that I could sneak a Blue Note record into this list, given the cost requirement, but I was able to sneak in Bobby Hutcherson's Knucklebean. So this one, median value is $9.37 on Discogs. Was originally released in 1977, again on the Blue Note label. The lineup here is fantastic. You've got Eddie Marshall, you have George Cables again, James Leary, Manny Boyd, Hadley Calliman, Freddie Hubbard, once again as well. So really fantastic lineup. Yet another example of a title that was mastered by Bernie Grunman. So it's going to sound great. I would say if you're going to start anywhere on this, you should check out the track titled Why Not. Super cool Bobby Hutcherson feature there. I mean, Bobby Hutcherson's obviously featured throughout this entire album, but he sounds really great there. The vibe on this album is kind of a mixture of post-bop and hard bop. And like I said, just really nice solos by Hutcherson throughout. I think that some of his later work can be kind of touch and go in terms of how produced it's going to sound, maybe how commercial it's going to sound. But I actually thought that I didn't really get that vibe here, and I'm actually not even sure if anybody else wrote any of these tracks besides Hutcherson. So anyway, I find this one to be really enjoyable. All right, next one up is David Friesen's Amber Skies. This one comes in at $9.07. This was originally released in 1984 on Palo Alto Jazz. The lineup here, well, it's actually listed there right on the cover for you, but it's Paul Motion, Paul Horn, Airto Moreira, Chick Corea, and Joe Henderson. Fantastic lineup, and especially great to see Joe Henderson there, right? Because anything he was a part of tends to be excellent. This is no exception. So I think that the title track, Amber Skies, is a highlight probably. It is definitely a modal piece. I think that Joe Henderson does really well with that style. I think he is a highlight here for sure, as is Chick Corea. Yeah, I mean, just, I don't know, the whole thing. This is one of those, though, that I think it was so late, again, 1984, that I just neglected for so long, and then I ended up picking it up, probably because of Joe Henderson, but really the lineup overall, and I was not disappointed. And again, $9.07. The last one I'm going to highlight on this 10 records at $10 list is Charles Davis Sextet, and the title is dedicated to Tad. Probably Tad Dameron, but it doesn't say, but that'd be my guess, right? So this one was originally released in 1979 on West 54 Records. Incidentally, this is a title that's, again, none of these have been reissued in the US on vinyl. I don't think this was ever been reissued on any format. Actually, there's a few in this list that have never been reissued on any format. So yeah, okay, so who's on this? We've got Walter Booker Jr., Billy Hart again, Kenny Barron, Clifford Adams Jr., and Tex Allen. So if I were to characterize this, I would say that it's maybe surprisingly straight ahead overall. It's definitely in a hard bop vein. It consists of all originals by the band members, and actually really just two. You've got Charles Davis pieces, and then you also have some by Tex Allen. And you know, I mean, here's the thing: is that Charles Davis, like, this is the same Charles Davis that recorded for Strata East, and he's been on a bunch of fantastic albums, you know, even by other musicians. This is one of the more affordable ones by far. You can get this also for coincidentally $9.07, as was the previous one. So yeah, I would highly recommend this one. I would say that it's difficult to preview. I think the only way you might be able to do it is go to Instagram and search for like hashtag Charles Davis and find somebody who might have posted a video of this album, because I couldn't find anything on YouTube. I couldn't find anything that I could preview elsewhere, but I would just say keep an eye out for it and pick it up when you see it. All right, so that's it. I just wanted to make a quick video, 10 records under $10. I mean, I'm always looking for cheap stuff, and I know a lot of people are as well. But people also want to know that they're not just, again, buying for volume. They're buying stuff that, when they spend their money, they want to make sure that it's going to be good. And I personally get a lot of enjoyment, as I said up front, out of these 10 records. And so I'd at least encourage folks to give them a shot, preview them when you can, and keep an eye out, because I just think that these fly under the radar. Again, they haven't been reissued in the US on vinyl, and you could argue maybe they shouldn't because they're all 70s and 80s. But listen, I mean, at this point, we're talking over 40 years ago, and to not have these in any format during that time, and possibly they didn't sell that well when they originally put out, I don't know. I think they're, I just think this is still worthwhile music, especially for those of us who are interested in this kind of, 70s thing that was happening in jazz. I find a lot of that excitement and a lot of that innovation still happening on these albums. And so that's why I wanted to recommend them. So I hope this was helpful or interesting. I hope somebody learned something they didn't know, or maybe you learned about a label that you hadn't heard of and now you want to go explore. So I don't know. If I did that, then I guess my job's done. Thanks very much as always, and I'll see you next time.